Yes, I grew up in a manufacturing home.
Okay.
I've gone home and the lights were never on.
Wonderful set of panelists. Melinda, let's start with you, because one of the things Ovita talked about first was this study that said that they need 8,800 housing units. And I know it's been over about 2 years since that study was completed. Can you tell us a little bit about that, or what efforts and accomplishments have been made to address those 8,800 housing units?
Sure. So the plan was approved by Mayor and Commission in October of 2023, and we began immediate implementation. And at that time, the study listed that there was a deficiency of approximately 88 tool and home buyer units, so not one or the other, but both. Unfortunately, with this new administration cutting funds left and right, I'm concerned that we're going to see a stronger deficiency, a greater deficiency, because housing vouchers are being cut, subsidies are being cut. But we're working with 8,800 because it's a number that we can wrap our heads around and try to use that as that goal to move forward. So implementation, we immediately began working with the Mayor and Commission, the GOC, Government Operations Commission, for potential reimplementation of the Land Bank Authority. And what that can do is work with one of the strategies that was suggested in the AHIS, which was disposition of locally government-owned property. If we were to sell it ourselves, we would have to sell it at market value. But if we have a land bank authority that is managing properties owned by the government for the purpose of affordable housing development, then it can be sold at a much lower value, much more affordable and attainable value for the intent of development of affordable housing. So that's one thing that we've done. Second thing we're working on right now is working with our attorney's office and with a group that assisted Make a Bid with getting their housing trust fund program up and running. And that is where the $5 million, $2 million for single family affordable housing projects, $2 million for LIHTC gap financing, and $1 million for the acquisition strike fund. That's where that money is. It's in that housing trust fund bank account. And as soon as we can get the entity that can get that up and running, then that funding will also be available to start attacking this problem. The other thing that we did was immediately ensure that our money, the CDBG annual funding that we have, our home funding that we have, was immediately invested to support what it said that we needed to do, which was the development of more affordable housing, single family home buyer units, and rental units. So we immediately released $2 million to build affordable housing, and we're in the process of having 10 units being developed with that. It's not a lot because the subsidy is so high in order to make a house affordable for somebody to buy. But these are some of the efforts that have been made. We also, of course, have our ARPA money that's out there, and Habitat just celebrated a ribbon cutting for their first unit as part of the 10 that they're building. Land Trust is developing 10 units with ARPA. EADC is building 2 rental units with ARPA. So, and we've also had a lot of money, millions of dollars into homeowner occupied rehab, which is needed in order to help people stay in their housing. So CDBG has been used for that purpose, and our ARPA money has been used for that purpose.
Thank you. Is there a deadline on these different funds, these pots of money?
ARPA ends December 31st, 2026. So those projects have to be finished. They have to be done by that date. Our home has a 4-year from date of allocation and contracting to completion of those projects. That's 4 years. They usually take about 2 to get done. And our CDBG is annual for homeowner rehab. So we have allocated funding on an annual basis to 2 agencies for that purpose as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. Brad, and maybe even Melinda on this one too. We talked about the funding and the things the government has done to forward affordable housing projects. One of the issues that keeps coming up, developers and contractors have complained about the cost and the red tape to build affordable housing, especially the small local developers. And the community itself has expressed a lot of concerns about that. There are a couple of housing studies that were done. The developers and contracts weren't even included in the housing report. How can we address the housing shortage when those in the housing market aren't involved? Are there any suggestions on how we can modify the current plan to include local developers?
I think from the standpoint of the first part of your question on costs associated with building homes, it's my understanding that Commissioner Thornton has put together another meeting that I'm going to attend with her, and that would be my first answer is we need to sit down and have a conversation specifically with those people building the houses and try to find out, because I've heard the same thing. I heard the same thing when I was planning director, where we seem to struggle sometimes with getting them to get to the detail level and tell us specifically what are the pieces that are within the local permitting process or within the zoning ordinance specifically that are creating problems for you. And until we know that, then it becomes very difficult to solve the problem. I have had some conversations with local builders, and I do know that one of the issues that he has expressed to me is that our current zoning ordinance, he would like to build attached townhome products that are fee simple for sale. And the way our zoning ordinance is set up right now to do that, whether you're in multifamily or whether you're in a single family zone, to do conventional financing on a fee simple attached townhouse is almost impossible. We've got a few. There's a development out off of Whitehall Road. If you're going towards Oconee County, down to Whitehall Road, on the left, white townhomes attached. I think it's Whitehall Village, maybe. Built several years ago. They were able to do that as a conventional finance subdivision. Each one of those townhomes are on their lots, but it's difficult to do and it takes more land than it probably should. That's one specific example. But that's the conversation that we need to have with the builders is the specific what. You know, with the cost of housing right now and the issues associated with it, I'm not sure anything else. There's no question about that. But you know, a reduction in a permit fee, a reduction in a connection fee for water and sewer, you know, that's going to help. But as a percentage of the cost and the increases that we've seen over the last several years in building new housing, it's going to be really, really small.
Okay, and can you quickly adjust, a lot of stuff you said, anybody who's in development will understand. Can you break that down a little bit in layman's terms?
Sure. In terms of your zoning districts have regulations that they've got to follow. Minimum lot sizes, you know, there are permits and fees associated with those permits that they have to go through. There is time that is involved and plans that have to be prepared in order to submit your application to receive your permit. Those are the challenges at the local government level that I see that, you know, could certainly be looked at. Now, if there are more specifics in the zoning ordinance, for example, or in our transportation and public works ordinances that are directly impacting in a negative manner a local builder's ability to build a house, or it's significantly increasing their cost versus another community in the area. Those are the things that we need to hear from the builders in an honest conversation. And I've talked to a few of them after I've learned that Commissioner Thornton has set up this meeting with them. And the one thing I've encouraged them is, if you're going to come to this meeting, I know there's commissioners sitting there and they've invited you, and that you ultimately are going to have to go in front of them at some point and ask for something in terms of zoning. But if you're not coming to the table and being straight up honest, even if you offend some people, then we're not going to get anywhere with it. And so I'm certainly hoping with that group that conversation will take place. And if there are things locally that we can amend, ultimately those are text amendments. They go back to the commission. Commission represents the community. So if the community values have changed from where they were 25 years ago, with really the last time we did an overhaul of our zoning, then the community speaks and we make those changes. And
Can I add something?
Yes, go ahead.
As much as I would love to be able to reduce the red tape that's involved with our money, I can't, because it's federal funding and we don't make those rules, the government does. And there's just going to be red tape and bureaucracy attached to federal CDBG and federal home funding. There's federal regs and bureaucracy attached to ARPA money. So it's one of those things that we are doing everything we can to make the process as simple as we can, but we cannot change regulations that are out of our control.
I think that's a great point, because the people that are trying to get to those dollars are dealing with a local government department to do it. And so they associate that with local regulations and red tape, and this is all federal, totally different and totally outside of the control of any of us at the local level.
Well, Alex, how does the future land use committee fall into place here? First of all, just tell us how the future land use committee even works.
Can I borrow that? Yes, we are, the Future Land Use Committee is a steering committee. So the map that we're putting together is a future up to about 20 years or so. So we're trying to figure out where the growth in this town is going to be, where the growth should be, and where the capability of Athens-Clarke County is in handling that. Ever since I've been on the Planning Commission, the word sewer or sewage is constant. Nothing happens until you can manage what goes on underneath the earth. And so water and sewer, that's it. You have to be able to handle that. And until you can do that, you can't build anything. It's not as normal to be able to do septic tanks, for instance. You have to have about 1.5 acres or more. I don't even, 1.5 to 2 acres of land in order to do that. But back to what we do. We, at the moment, we have finished our draft map. And I've got flyers with dates, but the map itself will go out into the public for public input. And this is, yes, I see Miss Looney back there, my good friend, has got some as well. So we're going to do public input sessions where you'll see the maps, you'll see part of the maps broken down, you'll understand it. It's a very colorful map, and it's a map you can just stare at for a long time and get bogged down if you're not careful. And I love maps, and I find myself just constantly. But we as a committee, not to carry on too much, basically looked at every single piece of property, often in sections, and decided what type of land use that needed to be and what would be the best. And a word that was, I was trying to look, and I may be jumping into another question, but density is, that's one of the solutions. We've got to be able to put more people in less land, but not everybody wants that. And I understand that. Do I want my neighbor to have 20 people living in that house? Maybe I don't, and maybe I do, but everybody has their own opinion in what they have tried to figure out. And with density also comes traffic. Everybody gets concerned about, can they get to and from, in and out.
Who makes the final decision? Is that you? Is that the mayor?
That's a great question, because most people probably don't know. So it'll go, so we've done the draft, what we call a draft map. Goes to the public, about 8 to 10 meetings where public input comes in. It'll come back to us for one more look with the input from the public. And then it'll go to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will look at this, and they will decide, okay, maybe we would like this Baxter Street done a little differently as far as density goes. And then that will then, both maps would then go to the mayor and commission, and the mayor and commission makes the final decision.
Okay. Where are you drawing your data from? Where are you getting your data sets from?
We're getting a lot from the county, but we're also getting a lot, our committee is well-versed in this type of thing. So while we're looking at data, we're also looking at capability. So we've got folks out there, it's what I call people with their feet on the street, that are in the rental world. We've got some builders in there. We've got myself as a realtor. I think there's another couple of realtors. Common citizens. Maxine Eason is part of this group. And if you know her, she is a very well-read, and she understands, a former principal of Clark Central. So it's not just, I don't want to make this committee look like it's just builders and realtors. It is a wide variety of people that have seen and done a lot in Athens. And so we're seeing the growth, but statistically, we just, in essence, know it's coming. We don't know that of the 30,000 people that Commissioner Thornton mentioned, I don't know if they're all university.
But let me jump to you, Dr. Hooker, because we see this housing growth and this housing security in Athens now. How does that impact the student population at the Clark County School District?
It has a major impact on our student population. As I think about many of our families, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when a lot of the affordable or Section 8 homes were bought up, we lost a number of students. When they renovated part of, was it Bethel Homes? One of the homes they renovated, we lost 53 students. So we're losing students to that. And many of our, I think about some of our elementary schools, you have a 42% transient rate. At several of our schools, we have high transient rates, and it's because families are moving month to month based upon what they can afford. So what do we do as a district to help those families? You will find that many of our schools have food banks, clothing closets for the families, and it has a major impact. Not only does it have an impact on our students, but on our faculty and staff. If you think of the first-year teacher who comes to this district making $52,000, $53,000 a year, they cannot afford housing. And with the rate of rental, even apartments, I'll give you a perfect example. My son is now going to be enrolled at University of Georgia next year in the master's program. We went around a couple days after he was accepted. 440 square foot studio apartment is $1,400 a month plus.
What?
Yes.
19?
Yeah. 19. Some places, yeah, we went to the cheap one. You're correct. And that does not include utilities. And you think about that, that's a college student. Imagine a family with 3 to 4 kids, and we're talking about a studio. We're not even talking about that. So many of our teachers are living outside the district. I talk to several students now, families are saying, I can't afford to continue to live here. I'm going to Oglethorpe County, or I'm going to Madison. Several of our teachers, I can't afford it. They're moving out. So that's going to have a huge impact on our families and our students.
Well, what role, is there a role, I guess, that the school district plays in affordable housing? Or you just say, well, that's something out of my sphere of influence. We're just going to handle education, and we can't worry about, somebody else is going to handle it.
I just left the conference in California, and I was talking to a number of superintendents all across the United States. And what we're having to think about is how can we help in finding affordable housing. There are several places in California, they had to raise how much they're paying teachers just to drive in. But we have to do something to help find housing here. As I grew up, most of my teachers lived in my hometown. And you got to see them. Now, today, many of them drive. We have, I know at least 2 people driving from Midtown to here to work. So it's having a great impact, not just on students, but on families. And how can we, as a community, work on that? Teaching employment skills to our families so that they can get higher paying jobs. The second thing is faith-based and other community leaders. If you want to help our students, because when you're transient that much, that has an impact on academic gaps if I'm going from school to school. But the other issue is that it also causes anxiety. Because I come home today and I'm living here in an apartment, but mom says we've got to move in 2 weeks, and I'm going to a different school. So that's why we have mental health counselors. We're dealing with kids, 2nd, 3rd grade depression, anxiety. It's a huge impact on our students. But not only that, if we want to help those students, get involved. I continue to preach this from my pulpit, and that pulpit is mentoring. Our kids need mentoring. Our kids need to see adults there saying that I believe in you, you can get through this, and our families need for you to understand. A lot of people think because our parents are not involved that they don't care. It's not that they don't care. They have to work 2 and 3 jobs. And we've raised our prices, our rates for entry teachers to 53. We compare it to some of the metro areas, but we've raised our rates for classified employees to $17 to $20 to $32 an hour. And guess what? We're still losing them. We're raising the rates, but the cost of inflation that is happening with housing is causing them to live outside of Athens, Clarke County.
You are a big community advocate. We often talk about housing affordability, but less about housing power. How can communities be supported in not just accessing housing, but shaping housing policy and development on their own terms?
Well, I think part of that is this, right? These kinds of conversations where we're actually inviting the community in to be a part of the conversation and to help with ideating and becoming a part of the solutions, right? Like, you need to talk to the community. A lot of times what we see is, and as a researcher, I see it in academia all the time, we look at something from the outside and we think we know what's going on and we say this is what it needs to do. And so we make proclamations and recommendations for what different groups need to do without actually knowing what's happening. Or we understand what, but we don't understand why. So we just make policies and programs around it. So you need to be talking to the people, right, who are involved in the day-to-day, who are living their daily lives, right, and who are being impacted by the decisions that policymakers, and people who are representing them make. So that's one major thing, is you need to have these people people involved in these conversations. And then it's access to information, right? Like, a lot of times, so one of the things that has attracted me to academia over and over again is the amount of information that I have access to. I am a researcher. I love it. I do it for fun, okay? On a daily basis, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, oh, that's a good idea, and get on my keyboard. So I love research. There is so much information that I get access to. I learn how the systems work. I understand what's going on. I'm learning about not only the macro, what the businesses are doing, but then on the government level, and then what the systems that we have in place have impact on your insides, right? And your insides affect what you do and how you operate with these systems. So until we start giving people more access to information, they cannot create the lives and the livelihoods that they want. We need to give people more agency. And right now we have a lot of institutions that block people's agency. So
Thank you. So we're going to turn our focus a little bit to affordable housing strategies and how to address these issues of affordability. And I'm really going to talk a lot to Connie, Mike, and Demetrius now. And Connie, she's too modest to say that, but she is one of those people who has many innovative ideas for housing, and she's actually a pioneer, y'all. She is part of the first generation of affordable housing mixed income deal. She's prepared debt and equity finance packages. So we have somebody in the house who is very knowledgeable. So Connie, tell us a little bit about mixed income communities. What are they? Do they make good sense in trying to develop affordable housing? Do they work?
I'm with T. There's no second best to research, and then I have to plug, everybody's plugging UGA, and I'm actually in the College of Environment Plus Design. And I'm doing a lot of research, and hopefully that will benefit Hope Village, because that's a tremendous project that I think can make a big difference and meets two of the recommendations that are set forth in the strategic plan for affordable housing here. It makes sense. It's not an easy thing to do. LIHTC, I'm speaking specifically of LIHTC, and bonds, which is what my background is in. I've always done mixed income housing. I've never done anything but mixed income housing for all of my career, because I think it's so important to the education and to the health of families that they have secure housing, and that they have housing that is not, I'm going to say, identifiable as a household that is living on government subsidy. It's important that these families are mainstreamed and seen as the rest of us in the community. So I've never done anything but mixed income housing, but it's not easy. It's complicated and bureaucratic, as we were saying earlier about federal dollars. It's incredibly bureaucratic, and the reason a lot of people aren't doing it is because it's kind of like when you get credit. You have to build your credit, and it's like, well, how do you build your credit if you can't get a credit card? A lot of these state housing finance agencies want developers that have And they're all different. They all have different requirements. Certainly, some of them go by number of projects, some go by number of units that you've developed. So you have to build this resume before you can even begin to play in the field. And the reason is because the state housing finance agencies, like Melinda's money, you've got to get the money out the door, and that money has to effectively do what you allocated that money to do, because if it comes back to you, you get the black eye, because that money is going to then be taken and it's going to be given to other state housing finance agencies that are appropriately administering their dollars, right, and goes to another state. So you don't ever want that to happen. So you're very careful about who you give your resources to. So LIHTC and bonds is very difficult to do, but when you know how to do it, it's a very, very, very effective tool, because Alex and I were talking about earlier, is that there's got to be a lot of times equity that goes into these deals. Something has to go into the deal to make it work, and a lot of times it's a lot of somethings that have to go into the deal to make it work. In most of my deals, there's upwards of 6 pots of money and pots and sources of financing and funding that go into the deal to make it work. And we call it a capital stack in our business. But you know, you've got to figure out how to make it work before anybody's going to come and offer you the money that you need to develop it. Right?
How are you getting? How do you get multiple stakeholders to the table to begin with? What's in it for them?
Well, most of the time in low-income housing tax credits, what's in it for the investor is a dollar for dollar write-down of their tax liability. So what's happening is they're going, the state, the IRS actually allocates the tax credits to the states. The states actually administer the tax credits, and so they have what they call a qualified allocation plan, and that's sort of the grant application, if you will. That's what the developers use to apply for the funding. And if they successfully win the funding, then they can take that allocation of tax credits and they can sell it, syndicate it to investors who are looking for that write-down. In some cases, it's you know, it used to be that the 9% credits were extremely competitive. They pay for about 70% of your development cost. That's tremendous. The 4% pay for about 30% of your development costs. So bonds come along with that to make up some part of the difference. But even beyond that, Athens-Clarke County is helpful in providing some tap fees, or in providing some ways of helping these deals move forward, because there is no housing trust fund here in Athens yet.
Yeah.
Yet. And I'm prayerful that will happen. But it does take several gaps, and then you end up with all these different funders at the table, and then some of them have conflicting regulations, and so then you have to sort of navigate the regulations to make sure that doing something with one pot of funding isn't going to cause you to be non-compliant with another pot of funding. So it's again, it's complicated, but it is so worth it to make these deals happen. I was at the Georgia Mall. This is on Wednesday night, listening to that developer, and a gentleman asked a question: if and the 10% of affordable units that are going into the mall, if extremely low and low-income folks are going to be able to live in those units. And the developer didn't see a way, because they're still going to have to pay, in his world, the rent that he's owed. But there are project-based vouchers that the state has that could help that situation. So again, it's either an operating subsidy or a development subsidy coming into the deal, but all these deals make those pro formas work for the deal.
Yeah, we have two parks projects, Country Corners and Pinewood. So manufactured homes have a bad history for the most part. Most everybody's familiar with the communities, and the communities over the years were not well managed. And it takes management. You have to have some controls, and most people don't want to live, even if you're living in a manufactured home, they don't want to live across the street from somebody who has a couple of tires up, a couple of cars up on blocks, tires in the front yard. One of my favorites is what was the former living room sofa is now not good enough to be inside, so they bring it outside, put it on the patio. I mean, those types of things are not, most people don't want that in their you know, or around their house. And so you have to manage the properties, and so we have that. The leases that we had in the two parks we bought, when we bought them, were 2 and 3 pages. Our lease is 21 pages. So it has a lot of requirements in there to enable the manager to manage the park and keep it up and keep it looking nice. So that's a reality that we have to own that. It's just the way it is. It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, there's places around the country, if you go look at manufactured home communities, and they're nice. And they're very affordable. And so the affordable thing is where, you know, listening to everybody talk about the red tape and the government regulation, and I would agree with all of that, and God bless you for taking that on. We don't have any of that. Our business model, and I think we're not that smart. I mean, there's a lot of people who could do this, but we don't need any federal money. We have a market-based product that people can afford to buy. It's a new house, and the houses are built. Most of the components that go into those houses are the same components you would find in a stick-built house. Same stuff. It's just our home comes in on wheels. It's on a chassis. Now,
Can you talk a little bit about those, the HUD regulations and guidelines, go with those now?
the ones I know. I mean,
I
don't know that I know.
think people sometimes think that it's just, they're throwing some garbage together.
Yeah, well, it's insulation, it's OSB wrap homes, you know, they're built, our perimeter walls are 2x6 studs, shingle roofs, certain roof pitch on there. The windows are double pane
So there's
windows.
codes that goes.
Right, exactly.
Right.
The HUD standard, and so that the HUD standard became effective in 1976, and so technically, nobody knows this, but mobile homes ceased in '76. They were no longer mobile homes; they were manufactured homes, and so that's a big difference. But again, the homes that we buy, and we buy new homes for our residents, are great quality. There is no shelf life on them as long as they're maintained. It's just like I had to replace my roof on my house a few years ago, and it hurt. Hated to do it. It's like, well, I just spent, I don't remember what it was. I think it was about $15,000, and the house looks the same, but I needed a new roof. And so you have to, the thought that you can have a manufactured home and never maintain it, and it will last indefinitely, is nuts. Your car won't do that. You got to change the tires and the oil every now and then. It'll run longer, but these homes will last a long time. You can look in our we don't own the homes. The residents own all of our homes, and so you can look at a lot of these homes, and they've been in place for 50 years. Some of them look pretty good. Some of them not so much, but some of them look pretty good. But people live in these homes, and so they have a lot rent that they pay to us, and so if they own their home, their lot rent's about less than $500 a month.
What's the average cost of manufactured home?
That's a good question. So that's kind of like asking, what does a car cost? But the reality, the homes that we buy in the market for our parks is 3 bedrooms. It's a family park, and so this is an installed price. But we're going to be about between $81,000 and $115,000 for a 3-bedroom house. That's about between $70 and $75 a square foot installed. Okay, now what would you say is the stick built cost per square foot? Per starter? $350. Yeah. Okay. So we're sitting there in our industry going, hey guys, we can put people in houses that they can own for, our average mortgage is between $1,100 and $1,500 a month. So, most of our residents, the average income of our residents is $54,000. So we're right in the hot spot of where we could accommodate a certain segment of people who need affordable housing and would not qualify for anything else. But the challenge is, affordable housing is I used to have red hair when I was young, but it's a redheaded stepchild, so I can say that, we get very little love from the community. And I understand why, I get it, but at some point the numbers, the math, has got to tilt the balance back to where at least some segment of the population can look at our product and say, hey, this is going to work for somebody.
Oh, I had a question about it, because you originally said you have about 2,500 residents in both parks. Over how many acres?
Well, that's a good question. We got, we have 150 acres between those two parks. Now, here's the challenge. We have acreage that we can't develop because of the way the code reads. We're stuck with it. We'll figure out something at some point, but the obvious use, because we are a community, a manufactured home community, which, I can understand when somebody say, hey, we don't want these things all over the county. I get that. You don't want anything all over the county, whether it's apartments or $1 million homes. But we have the ability, we could probably this year and next year, we'll probably put another 50 homes in between the two parks, and then we're full, unless we do something. And so if we had a straightforward path to be able to put in more homes, we could probably put in close to maybe another 200. But it's hard. Yeah, I mean, building anything is not easy. And so, but most of us chose this line of work. I mean, nobody made us say, well, you go develop, manufactured homes in Athens. I mean, we decided to do that on our own. So I don't know if I answered your question, but we've got land to do more without doing much. We got water, we got sewer. Somebody mentioned those things. I mean, you can't have density without sewer. So sewer's the key, and we've got it. I mean, it stops on our property. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Sure. And Demetrius, the land trust model is another strategy for affordable housing. It's taken quite a beating over the years. I've heard people refer to it as a form of sharecropping, trying to stop people from owning land. Can you dispel some of those myths and tell us how the land trust model works and why it's necessary for this particular model to work this way?
I haven't heard any of those things. Right, where my bed is. I want to start first with it's a little bit of an irony when talking about who's attracted to come to Athens, right? The idea is that, cities should be designed in a way and made in a way that works for the people who live there, right? So if it's attractive to people who don't live here, but yet there are some obstacles and challenges for the folks who do live here, then what's our North Star as a community? What is the challenge that we really face is we lack this sort of collective shared vision about what we could be. And Athens has an opportunity to do something that most communities have never done. And so when I think about, again, the accessibility of housing, housing does become, it's an economic development issue, just as much as education, certainly our county government, our planning, all of that. With our land use, the plans that are on the way there. It is a real challenge for us, and it's for our neighbors. Many of those who are from, now I'm not from Athens, so I say us because I just embrace community. It's this idea that you learn how to love a community because of the people who live there. And so we have folks who want to access the foundations of wealth and wealth building, who want to at least be able to see a way that they can kind of make those steps incrementally, maybe even not for themselves, but even for their children. So the model that Athens Land Trust has, right, this community land trust model, it is one piece of this bigger sort of ecosystem around wealth building. But we're just one piece. We provide housing for folks where housing is out of reach. Our conventional way of doing things doesn't work for the folks that we serve, right? And so what we do is, in our model, we do own the land and sell the houses to individuals that can then build equity from those homes. Their housing cost is well below that 30% threshold that does multiple things. It allows folks to actually increase their savings. It allows folks to actually get a tutor for their kids. They can get advanced degrees. There are multiple things. They can start a business. But the thing is, in our model, we ensure that that piece of land is available for the folks where it's out of reach in perpetuity. That land is always available. It will never go away, because once you lose it to the private sector, it's gone. Once investors get a hold of it, you'll never see that property again, right? So that's what we do. We provide 8 hours of HUD training, pre-purchase, so that individuals have an opportunity to understand and learn the process of what it takes to not only acquire the house, and then we provide supportive services after they've acquired the house. And we've got a list. We've got a waiting list. We don't build nearly enough houses to actually, Commissioner, we're not building 800. We're going to try to build as many as we can.
Well, you can work it out with Mike.
And so it's and again, I've heard all that. My grandparents were sharecroppers in Molina, Georgia. It ain't sharecropping, I can tell you that. If you're not aware of what sharecropping is, this is not that, right? So it's an opportunity. Come to our place, see the homeowners when they purchase the house for the first time. Watch the smile and the sense of dignity, the idea of safety for them and their families, and now they can begin to see something, a bigger, brighter future. Now the challenge that we face is, again, collectively, are we all sharing that? Do we all have this sort of understanding of a shared vision? How do we share an economic opportunity for everyone? Do we share in the idea of what it looks like for a community to actually help grow its people collectively? And so Athens Land Trust, that's what we do. We do other things as well. I mean, we've got some great work around our community agriculture. So land is very important to us. The idea of food security and access, we do. Actually, we help grow and provide some of the foods actually that are delivered to some of the homeowners on the property, right? Now again, if that homeowner decides to, they can pass that home on to their children. And again, it can rest with them in perpetuity. But I tell you one thing, we're not going to shy away from the idea that this land should be available and be affordable and accessible to our neighbors and the folks who otherwise wouldn't be able to access it. So I'm happy to answer any other questions, but essentially for the Athens Land Trust around affordable housing, that's what we do.
Okay, thank you so much, Demetrius. I know we're running out of time. Can I squeeze in 2 quick questions before we, okay? And then we'll go to question and answers from the audience. Connie, I wanted to give you an opportunity. You mentioned Hope Village. Is there anything you can tell about Hope Village right now, or anything about the community? She mentioned, one of the things Connie mentioned was Hope Village. I'm sorry, I wasn't talking to the mic. Can you tell us a little bit about Hope Village right now, or what the plans are for that and where that's headed?
We haven't fully developed the program yet, but it will be phased development. It's about a 73.2 acre parcel, and it will be developed over phases. We hope the first phase will be a senior building, and we're working on the number of units that will be. We're excited that we've actually been in contact with the CEO of the health department or health clinic that is over in the downtown area, Marcus Garner, and they are interested in building a new facility for themselves on the lower level below the senior housing. So it would be the first phase would be a combination of a new health clinic on the bottom level of some senior housing in one building. We want a community building so that there is a gathering place for different events. There will be an outdoor amphitheater venue for what I always, in my career, have called screen on the green, but different things that it could be used for the community. There would be a youth camp that would be built that is somewhat right now envisioned as a lake and some little cabins. We were laughing and saying earlier, it's like I was in the band, and when I went to band camp, we all have seen those cabins that they're wood for about halfway up, and then they're screen, they're chicken wire for the rest of the way up, at about 10 bunk beds, and girls in there. That's what those we sort of envision these camps being. But it'd be summer camp for kids there, and then the later phases would be family housing, and it would be we envision it being what in the industry we call mixed tenure. So it would be a mixture of rental housing, for-sale rental housing, market rate rental housing, and it would be affordable, fee simple, rental and for-sale, and on both ends of the housing spectrum, affordable and market rate, in both the rental and the for-sale. But the for-sale wouldn't probably come until the very last phase. But it would be phased senior, then family, and then the for-sale, because we would like to provide some for-sale opportunities out there.
Thank you all for this incredible conversation. I have so many questions that I could ask, but this is a question for Mr. Warren. I spent a lot of time at Pinewood Estates back when y'all first bought the building, helping provide legal aid to residents who were facing eviction pro bono. And I met a lot of your Michigan-based managers, but I never had a chance to meet you. And you mentioned how important maintenance is when you're talking about a house, a mobile home, a park, anything. So my question for you, knowing that the Pinewood residents are facing frequent water shutoffs, and when they do have access to water right now, it is of questionable quality, it smells like rotten eggs, and they have been trying, the library specifically has been trying to get these problems addressed for, at least since I became involved in 2022. My question for you is, what does your company need in order to fix this water? Is there anyone that you could collaborate with to fix it? If Pinewoods is on a well, is that well rated for a certain number of trailers? I've heard maybe that it is rated for 250 trailers, but new trailers keep getting added. And how much would it cost to fix this problem?
How many questions was that exactly?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure that somebody was going to show. Our water issues have been, I would say, documented. Both parks, Pinewood and Country Corners, were built on wells. Okay, there was no county water. Country Corners is now on county water. Pinewood is not. So there's some things that have been said about our water that are true, and there's some things that are not true. And so we can own the things that are true. So first off, our water lines, when they were built, we have over 5.5 miles of water lines. And I can promise you, when they were building those, they didn't go over here to Athens Hardware and say, give us your best quality water line materials that we can install to build this park. They probably said, what do you got on the value bin that we can buy? So we got every kind of form of water line imaginable in the ground. There are no drawings, so nobody knows exactly where the water lines are. So they know not where there's any shutoffs. So your water for the park is either on or it's off. And that's a problem because we have a lot of leaks. And so we're constantly trying to fix those. We spent a lot of money so far trying to solve the water situation. I think Country Corners were in decent shape. Pinewood, we still got some work to do. But nobody knows, there's no technology available that shows you where to find a plastic pipe in the ground. Unless there's a marker on it, you don't know where it is. So you could be standing right on top of the water line. Right on top of it. And you dig down 4 feet and you don't find it. But if you go down 4.5 feet, you find the water line. So fixing the water lines at Pinewood is a challenge. The issue with the library that you mentioned, has been ongoing for eons. I don't know how long. And the problem is that when we have to shut the park down, when the well has to be shut down, they lose their water just like every one of the residents do. We don't shut it off for drill, I can promise you. If we shut it down, we're trying to fix something. So the issue with the library wasn't an issue until they got a new library director. And she is a crackerjack. And she has done phenomenal work with that library, turning it into a real amenity for the park and the community. And so what's happened there is all of a sudden you got people coming to the library using it. And so when they show up and we shut down the water, well, that's not a very good thing because it's a municipal building. You can't do that. And so we weren't aware that they were using it that much more. And so we were trying to solve the problem for the library by figuring out how to put in shutoffs in the park. We couldn't do that. And so we had to come up with a different solution. So we did that. We finally figured it out. We talked to 4 plumbing supply companies and we talked to 4 plumbing contractors. The 4th plumbing contractor was the one that told us what we needed to do. He happens to be a plumber. He was in Alabama. He does installations with Buc-ee's. Everybody knows Buc-ee's. And so he says, yeah, I've had this problem before. I can tell you how to fix it. We bought the parts. We fixed it in less than 2 weeks. So if you talk to Evelyn out there at the library right now, she'd tell you that problem has been solved. So anyway, we're trying to get the shutoffs in there to solve the problem. Those are things we can own. The issue you said about the water quality is, in my opinion, there could be some validity to that, but there's not a lot, and I'll tell you why. Wells inherently don't always give you the same water. Sometimes you'll get an odor. It's just they're coming out of the ground. Our wells are managed by North Georgia Water Systems. They're a licensed private utility contractor. They manage water systems all over North Georgia. And so they're out there all the time. The water's safe to drink. I've heard rumors that you can't drink the water. That's not true. Sometimes it may have an odor. If it does, we get those guys out there. They do what they call a shock to the well system, and it solves the problem. But the water is fine to drink. I've drank it myself. And so there's a little bit of just kind of a wives' tale on that. But I hope that answered all those questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, what we're going to do now?
Good afternoon. My question is for Melinda. Sorry. You mentioned the CDBG, home investment, and the American Rescue Plan Fund. You also mentioned the strike fund and that affordable housing piece, which is general funds. I have a question about the payment in lieu that the Housing Authority makes every year, and if that is the same fund, the Affordable Housing Fund, are they making payments into that? And since that would not be general fund related, what's the mechanism of a developer accessing those funds to provide and produce affordable housing?
So they're all a part of the Affordable Housing Special Revenue Fund. So they've all been tied together now. That money that's being paid into pilot funding is going to be a part of the Housing Trust Fund. So as soon as that Housing Trust Fund is up and running, all of the money that's available, the $5 million that was allocated very specifically, and then the pilot funding will be folded into it. It will all then be accessible. It'll be accessible to affordable housing partners, developers, private developers, builders. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to be a mechanism for anyone to tap into.
And then are you going to fund it? Is it going to be funded for FY26?
That is not a Melinda question. That is a mayor commission budget question. I'm not sure. I know the budget's tight this year. The thing is that once it's put into that special revenue fund, it doesn't go away. It doesn't have to come back. It's safe. That's the whole point of putting it into that. We're just trying to find the right agency to be able to allocate that funding and manage that funding so that we're not in violation of the gratuities laws. Our funding has very specific criteria for for building. It has to meet certain standards. Mm-hmm. We encourage development that is green and that is energy efficient because we're putting someone in there that is going to have a limited income and they don't need to have a $500 electric bill every month. Right. So the more energy efficient it is, the less that their utilities are going to be. But those standards aren't above and beyond what's absolutely required. Of course, you want a house to look nice, but it doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles. As far as our developers, I mean, they're nice houses, they're beautiful houses, but they're not frilly, they're not fancy. So I really couldn't answer for anyone else. Did you want to give it a shot? Okay.
I can tell you in our area of the business, it does. I mean, there's certain things that, and this is not unique to Clark County, but things like being on a permanent foundation. You may have to do that. You might not be able to put a single section home in there. In other words, a single wide you can't do. Certain areas where you can do that may have to be double. The roof pitch, the front aesthetic aspects, the size of the house, all those things would come into play in our area of business.
I have a daughter, and she has 3 children, and I love my grandchildren to death. I stay in Bethel Midtown Village, and everybody sees the construction that's going on over there. But we was misled because we was told once they started building and some units was available that we would be the first to move in. That was a lie. I'm just gonna call the egg egg. My daughter used to stay out there by the skating rink. Some people from Florida bought her duplex. She had to move. Well, they thought she was gonna be on the street. But I put her in, she's in a 1-bedroom with me, with my grandchildren. And she's been on our authority list for the longest until they told her she was number 3. And she's been 3 for several months now, number 3, but other people has moved in before her. And like he said, this affects the children. I have to look at my grandchildren's face every day when I come home from work and look at other folks' children. A lot of children are heavy burdened with what's next, mama or daddy, where we gonna stay, what we gonna eat, and this and that. Me, as a single parent, I'm taking care of mine. If we do have to stay in this 1-bedroom until Bethel home in mind what they gonna do. But it's other families out there that's not that fortunate to have somebody to let them live with them. Even though, you know, it's not legal, but I refuse to have my child outside on the street with the rest of the homeless people that couldn't afford that. And I know these children is getting, I see it every day. He's telling the truth. Even with staff, we get frustrated. We get annoyed. Kids have attitudes with us because they're suffering. And we don't know that as their home life. They're going through a lot. And we go through a lot trying to help them. And it's hard for us to help them if we can't truly help them. And all this development, and I might be wrong, y'all forgive me, but this is on my heart. I've been in Athens since a little girl. I was born here. But Athens has really turned out to be for college students. And you push it, everybody back that's older, wiser than those, you're pushing us out of Athens. He said that folks coming here to live, and I don't see how. Because half the folks are going to Oldthorpe, like he said, Madison County, Hull. I can't afford to go nowhere else. I said a 1-bedroom, I pay $825 a month for this 1-bedroom. That's no good. Yeah, I'm getting something here right now. But I'm making it. I mean, by the grace of God, I'm making it. And I look forward to getting out of Bethel home. Every day I get up, go to work. That's my release, because I can't stand staying over there right now. But I would love to stay in a mobile home, you know, a manufactured home, if I could afford it. And I would love to stay in a house if I could afford it. I tried land trust one time before you got there. They took all my information, had me clean up my credit, and I did all that, and still nobody helped me. And I don't have faith in the system anymore. I don't want to feel like this, but that's just the way my cookies have come to me. But I try to be strong for my children, my grandchildren. I don't let them see me break down or nothing. But it's just hard out here for us, and we don't have the money to move into better spots or positions.
UGA has a moral requirement that they should handle their own student population on campus or build their own stuff so that students are removed from our market. That's just in general.
Okay, so I'm a student, right? So I'm going to speak, right? So I first want to acknowledge and validate both of the comments, right? Because you're absolutely right. So I'm going to speak very transparently, very candid about my perspective and what I see. So we were talking earlier about the fact that there are students here who don't know where they're going to be living tomorrow, next week, 2 months from now. So let's call it what it is. The students who are here, who are residents of this city, this town, this county, are being displaced in favor of students who come here with money. Okay, so let's just call it what it is. Okay, that's the truth. Okay, because a lot of these students come in here, their parents have money. Their parents will pay for X, Y, and Z, and so some of these things that are happening right now, it is the fact that okay, you are you're not crazy. You are seeing things being developed that are for those students.
Questions that they ask about displacement of students. But I can tell you, each one of our principals have a heartbeat on what's happening with our students. I'll give you names, I'll get in trouble, but Ovita will bail me out. Where is she? She walked out the room when I said that.
She's about to sit down.
We have several of our schools, Howard B. Stroud, 42%. We have several, another school, 30-some% transient rate. So can you imagine a student that comes in August, by October to December, they move 3 times? The impact that has on an academic for a student. And I can tell you, I've had conversations with these parents. They are not bad parents. They're working Wendy's, they're working Kroger's, they're working at the nursing homes. And the word they say to me, I'm trying to provide, Dr. Hooker. I had one parent, 6 kids, over at Howard B. Stroud. They have a partnership with Mount Olive Seventh-day Adventist Church. And there's a church out of Oconee that partners with them once a week. These churches put in $500, $700 almost every month to provide food for these families. It's part of their budget because they want to help these families. That's what we need from the community. Our kids need stability. And we always say, well, our kids are not learning. Well, how sorry, Pastor. How can they learn if they're constantly moving? How can they? That's something that we all have to address and stop blaming parents and blaming the school system. This is something that is happening community-wide. I see it every day. I see kids who are hungry. I call them brown bags. On Fridays, they send them home with bags with food. They gravitate to it. They gravitate to it. If it was left up to me, we probably need washing machines in each one of our high schools so that families can go wash their clothes. We have an issue here, but no one wants to talk about it. We want to blame the school system. Yes, I grew up in a manufacturing home. I've gone home and the lights were never on. I never asked my mom why. I knew to close my mouth and wait 3 to 4 days and the lights would be back on. I know what it means to have your water turned off. I know what it means to have 3 sets of clothes that you wear the entire week. I understand where my kids are coming from. Many of you have not experienced that. Go live in a home where you have 2 to 3 bedrooms, as she talks about, and you got 6 kids. Been there.